Hello, my book butterflies, and welcome to episode 2 of the Main Chapter podcast. My name is Brianna, and before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for their love and engagement on my first episode about finding her edge with Madeline Keys. It's been so cool seeing how it's grown over the last 2 weeks. This episode, we're doing something a little different. Last episode was for my romance readers, and this episode is for my nonfiction readers, specifically those who are into nutrition. I just got done speaking with Abbey Sharp, who is known as a no BS dietitian. She has over 1 million followers on TikTok and has made a career over the last 15 years talking about diets and food, and just came out with a book, The Hunger Crushing Combo Method, which we get into, as well as other really important topics like Ozempic, body image, the rise of SkinnyTok. Even if you don't read nutrition or nonfiction, I think this interview is so important to listen to. I learned a lot. I think you'll learn a lot as well. And without further ado, let's get started. Have some questions here for you. You've been creating content on social media for obviously years now. You even have a podcast. What made you decide to write a book?
Well, I mean, this book has been a long time coming because I actually started to use the framework, the Hunger Crushing Combo, about 10 years ago to essentially describe a meal that was going to hit all of the satiety and satisfaction buttons. And so I actually trademarked the term Hunger Crushing Combo about 5 years ago, and I've been using this essentially as my signature framework throughout all of my content, all my videos. It's something that I've become known for. People have been sharing their own hunger crushing combos. I've tried to teach people how to kind of dress up their fear foods, or their the foods that they consider junk foods that they can't kind of keep themselves away from. How to turn those into balanced meals to help them meet their goals without deprivation and denial. And it just became, it was time to write a comprehensive book after so many years of people asking for a nutrition Bible, a nutrition book that they could actually, turn to when, of course, online the misinformation was a flowing. So yeah, the feedback so far has been incredible.
I saw that. It's been so exciting seeing the reviews on Goodreads and how
Yes.
big it is on the Amazon charts. I actually started reading it and I really loved your first chapter where you were talking about your own story. I thought it was very vulnerable. And I learned about orthorexia. That is something
hmm
that I never heard of before. And I was wondering if you could further explain it to listeners who might not be familiar with it.
Of course, yeah. Well, orthorexia is essentially considered like clean eating taken to an extreme, or healthy eating taken to an unhealthy place. And so, unlike more well-known eating disorders like anorexia, where the goal is often to shrink your body or limit how much or how many calories you're consuming, with orthorexia, it's not about the quantity of food; it's about the quality of food. And so often there's a lot of fear based kind of messaging. Oh, if I, eat this food that I have deemed quote unquote unhealthy or junk, then something catastrophic is going to happen to me. And it often starts very innocently because, in fact, a lot of these belief systems are normalized and celebrated by our social and kind of culture. So we're always living in this wellness culture of clean eating, detoxing, seed oils are bad, gluten is bad, dairy is bad. This is the beginning. This is the birth of a lot of these orthorexic tendencies. So we have seen a huge uptick in orthorexia, and no different than anorexia or bulimia, it can do real physical and emotional harm. And as I'm a testament to that, really. And so we can't ignore the impact of a lot of the misinformation that we read about online, a lot of the fear mongering around food. And that is really what my MO has been grounded in, is helping people, make sense of food in a world that feels very much, the messaging are so contradictory, so overwhelming. And to take that fear out of eating, when eating really should just be, our primal and most pleasurable activity.
Yeah, and I remember when reading you talked about how you first took sugar out of your diet and then you were
Hmm.
looking to take fat out of your diet. Were you nervous at all when you started sharing your story about how people might respond? And what do you hope readers take away from reading your experience?
I have a feeling, and this is not the first time. I've been very open about my experience with orthorexia since the beginning of my career. I mean, I've been on YouTube for 15 years, and I've been talking about it for that long because it really has shaped the trajectory of my career and of my kind of genre of content. And I think there's a lot of people who see themselves in my story, and it's a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people who have been living in circles because we do this in as part of diet culture, where these beliefs or these messages are just normalized, they're celebrated. It's kind of a no pain, no gain, like, you feel like you're doing these things for health. And that's where it can start. But it very quickly can teeter into these problematic kind of corners of our relationship with food, and do real damage. And so I know it's helped so many people recognize their own problematic kind of thought processes and behaviors around food, and basically form the first step in their recovery.
Right. I remember I found your story very relatable because I've never had an eating disorder, but I have caught myself leaning towards disordered eating
Hmm.
tendencies. And books like this are so, so important. So, obviously, as the title suggests, the hunger crushing combo, the book is about that method and how you emphasize balance of protein, healthy fats, and fiber. I was like, what's the last one?
Yes.
But versus diets are more on the restrictive side. So why should someone choose the hunger crushing combo over diets overall?
Absolutely. So this is really like a very simple science, but with a massive mindset shift. Because traditional diets, whatever they may be, are telling you to cut something out. And this is where, orthorexia starts in a lot of cases. This is where anorexia starts in a lot of cases. And so, and also just again, disordered eating. So they're telling you to cut out sugar, cut out fat, cut out this food group, cut out calories. And this puts us in a state of scarcity mentality that is always going to trigger hyperfixation and obsession and binging. And eventually, people just like throw in the towel and quit, and then diet starts again tomorrow. And they get stuck on this hamster wheel their entire lives. So, the hunger crushing combo method really flips the script because it is working with our biology and our psychology to think about adding, not taking away. And this mindset shift is so important. And we're specifically going to focus on adding fiber, protein, healthy fats. And this is going to be for this is really playing into what these compounds do in our body. They're going to keep us fuller longer. They're going to stabilize blood sugars. They're going to quiet that food noise and those incessant cravings. And they help us reach our healthiest, happiest weight without scarcity mentality, without deprivation that typically does trigger that binge.
Right, right. I am someone who loves food, and I always look at food as a source of like bonding, comfort. For
Hmm.
example, like my family, we always like going out to brunch and trying like new
Yes.
pancakes or going to donut shops whenever we go to a new town. We love donuts. But I know, especially myself, I sometimes have this guilt after eating a really big brunch, especially if I do it a couple days in a row or some donuts. What would you suggest for someone like me, how I could implement the hunger crushing combo into my life or people listening who are similar to that?
Absolutely. I hear this often, and this is exactly, why this method is so successful for folks. Because when we kind of take away the judgment and the shame around this is a bad food, this is a good food, we start to be able to non-judgmentally honor our hunger and fullness cues a lot more easily. And so at this big brunch, if you are just thinking about adding, okay, do I have a source of fiber at this meal? Do I have a source of protein? Do I have a source of healthy fats here? You are going to feel far more satiated without needing to overdo it on, let's say, a massive stack of pancakes that is going to leave you feeling kind of sluggish. And then you're going to get the blood sugar crash and you're going to be thinking, oh my God, why am I hungry so soon after eating this massive stack of pancakes and I need another snack? And you end up doing this kind of chasing. And at the end of the day, you just don't physically physically feel very good, and you're feeling kind of emotionally stuck in this guilt cycle of, oh, I ate really bad this morning, and now I'm kind of still feeling like I want to eat something that's maybe not so healthy. So this really nips that cycle in the bud, because it's working again with our hunger cues. We're able to collect data essentially on how these foods make us feel non-judgmentally. And let's say, you go for brunch and you're like, you've got the hunger crushing combo method in mind. You're not thinking I'm in scarcity mentality. You're not thinking, oh, I can never have the pancakes if the pancakes are really what you want. But maybe you have pancakes for the table, and you're going to get like some, an egg dish for your protein. You're going to get some fruit on the side for your fiber. You're going to have some avocado on toast for your healthy fats. You're going to basically anchor those, what we call naked carbs, the pancakes, to feel so much more satiated sooner. So you don't need to polish off the whole stack of pancakes. You're going to feel good. It's like you get your cake and you get to eat it too. The satisfaction and the satiety piece. And that is so key.
I love that. Just a week ago, my mom and I split like a thing of pancakes while we were at brunch, while we had our own healthier on the meal side. And you're
Yes.
right, I did feel a lot better throughout the day. And you really made like a career, especially on TikTok, calling out different diets or eating tactics. And I'm curious to know, what diet do you think is the biggest scam of all?
Oh gosh, there's so many. But for right now, at least these things come and go in terms of the waves of trends. But the carnivore diet is such a scam. Not only is it counter to literally all the best data we have on, healthy eating and longevity, which is really grounded in the fact that we need more fiber and less red meat and saturated fat. But all of the claims out there that we see from these carnivore influencers, that it cured their acne, it helped them lose weight, it reduced their inflammation, all of these buzzwords. It's not because of adding the meat. It's because when you cut your food sources, your food selection down to what, like three or four different foods, you're naturally going to end up removing one or two foods that maybe were triggering some of these symptoms. But this is exactly again why that additive approach comes into play, because when we are thinking about adding these nutritious foods, rather than I can only eat meat and I can't have carbs anymore and I can't have sugar anymore and I can't, nobody is sustaining the carnivore diet for very long unless they are trying to sell you something that requires them to stay on the carnivore diet. So I would say that that's the biggest scam, and I absolutely worry about that becoming, seen as some kind of reasonable way to be eating for the average person.
I'm sure the gym bros are not going to be excited to hear that
No,
the carnivore diet is
don't do
not
it.
good.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it.
Yes, well, while we see stuff like the carnivore diet, you say kind of coming in cycle and rising in popularity, everyone is now saying skinny is back, and we're going back
Mm,
to those early 2000s, late
yep.
90s, skinny is in. And what was your response as a dietitian, seeing the rise as what a lot of people call skinny talk, or like pro
Yeah.
Anna and all those?
Yeah, it is really hard to watch this, the pendulum swing after I feel like we had made some progress in the body neutrality space, body diversity in the media. And just so your listeners understand, like skinny talk is kind of like this subculture on social media that's glorifying extreme thinness, often promotes disordered behaviors. The extreme messages are typically twisted into these other narratives around discipline or femininity or self-worth or having this luxurious lifestyle, and skinny being the outfit and things like that.
Yeah.
It's wild. And I think one of the reasons why it has made such a splash, there's a few reasons. One is that the boom of Ozempic and GLP-1s and these medications, because we know that thinness has always been seen as a marker of moral value, a status symbol. And when we have widespread access to thinness through medications, it is essentially threatened those who have built their identity capital around achieving thinness the kind of quote unquote hard way. So women are kind of like really digging their heels and making it as hard as possible to essentially reclaim that moral status. And then also, we're really living in this really politically, culturally, financially, socially uncertain timeline right now. And when the world feels unpredictable, the body becomes the project, and food becomes something to really, again, control, to feel like we can like really sink our teeth into and control. And this is why we're seeing an increase in disordered eating, eating disorders, young girls online following these SkinnyTok influencers who are telling them to only eat 3 bites of something, and to call themselves a fat pig if they are not wanting, if they don't feel like doing their workout or they're walking that day. This no pain, no gain approach to nutrition and behavior change, we know from research, does not work. It makes you want to do these things less. So this is completely counter to the hunger, crush, and comma method, where we're focusing instead on adding, which naturally, when we add these things, we naturally do edge out some of the less nutritious, less satiating foods. And the research shows for folks who have excess fat to lose, it naturally, effortlessly creates a calorie deficit. So I am worried about the SkinnyTok kind of conversations happening, especially for young people, vulnerable people online.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how you brought up the aspect of control because I remember, I don't know if you've heard of her, Lindsay Sterling. She's a famous violinist, and I read her book back in high school, and she struggled with an eating disorder, and it stemmed from control. She was going through a lot of life changes, and eating was what she could control in her life. So I've
Hmm.
never thought about how when the world is kind of in a disarray, people kind of latch onto their food and body
Yes.
as a means of that. You also referenced the GLP-1 weight loss drugs. And
Hmm.
as someone who worked in entertainment journalism, Ozempic was basically in the headlines every day. I had a
Yes.
whole gallery that I would update almost weekly of celebrities talking about Ozempic and GLP-1 weight loss drugs. And obviously, there
Hmm.
are people who need it for
Yes.
medical reasons. But for people who are just looking to lose weight, do you think there's a safe way to use them?
Um, Respectfully, no. Again, I want to hold space that I'm all about knowledge is power. I'm so grateful for advances in technology like this because there are folks who these drugs are going to be absolutely life changing. A lot of folks deal with this persistent food noise their entire lives, and this can be a real relief valve for them, which allows them to engage in other acts of self-care and healthy behaviors. But the way right now, they're being utilized in Hollywood, and really across North America, there are a lot of people who are being harmed by the social pressure to use it. And I worry for a lot of reasons that this is causing body diversity to become completely snuffed out, through through media representation and also just everyday people. The conversation becomes, why aren't you on a GLP-1? Even if you have 10 pounds to lose, there are so many side effects to these medications. They're a lifelong medication. You will gain weight back if you if you come off of them. Because the weight loss is so fast and dramatic, a large proportion of the weight is coming from lean tissue like muscle mass, and that is going to increase our risk of chronic disease long term if we are losing our metabolic muscle. Also reduces, it's not good for longevity, for independence as we age. And so I worry about that. I worry also about the pathologizing of hunger. I mean, hunger is our most primal biological signal that keeps us alive. Because I think about our cavemen ancestors, if they didn't feel hunger, they would just have hung out in their cave until something that did feel hunger came and ate them. And so to get to a point where we are feeling like any signal of hunger in our body is something to freak out about, we need to snuff it out, we need to quiet it, we need to silence it. It it feels dystopian to me because that is what makes humans humans. This is what has kept us alive since the dawn of time. So I really worry about this becoming kind of the status quo of, just how we live our lives, where food is just reduced to something that we can consume as minimally as possible. And as long as we don't feel hunger, then then we're doing good.
Right, right. And I know it was really scary to me was seeing girls, because I'm 24, so seeing girls
Hmm.
around my age who are not necessarily needing to lose weight, already a size 4, getting on it
Hmm.
and seeing
Hmm.
their hair fall out, these skin
Yep.
conditions. So it's scared to see what things will happen in the long run. And people are so defensive about food, diet, Ozempic, and I'm sure you've gotten
Hmm.
backlash and
Oh,
hate
yeah.
comments. How
Oh,
do
yeah.
you handle all that negativity that comes with your profession sometimes?
It's a lot. Again, like I've been doing this for 15 years, and thankfully, I'm older, wiser, more mature, and ultimately very confident in my messaging. I know that, food has become basically political, right? Like it's people's religion at this point. People feel so strongly about their way of eating. So when I kind of come to the scene and I'm telling making a comment that this carnivore diet, for example, is unhealthy for the mass majority of people, there are a lot of angry people about that, because it's like I'm insulting their political or religious belief, and so I have had to just come to terms with the fact that if I'm not making people angry, I'm not doing a good enough job. I'm not getting loud enough because it's very hard to compete with diet culture because it's so sensationalized. It's hard to fight, sensationalism with science because people want the magic, people want the mysticism, they want the quick fix, they want the simple answer to all their problems. When the answer is it's kind of basic stuff. It's not just like eat this one food or cut this one food out or take this supplement. It's sleep, a balanced diet. It's moving your body. It's stress reduction. It's socioeconomic factors that in a lot of cases we cannot really control without the structure around us, the economic or the social structure around us being built to support our health. These are big issues, but people want to just think that, oh, if I just remove red dye 40 from my diet, then everything's going to be better. And so, yeah, I've just had to, I know what I'm saying is evidence-based, and I feel confident that, yeah, I'm going to piss people off because they want to believe that their way of eating is good. But I know in the end that science wins, and that's what I'm trying to communicate.
Exactly. It's scary that science and studies have become so political. And I
Mhm.
know there were you did like a 2025 recap trend about everything that happened food wise. Of all the trends you reported on, what was your least favorite from 2025?
Oh gosh, so many. Oh, wow. Well, I'm just gonna say that I'll just call it one of them, which is raw milk.
Oh, yeah, raw milk.
I mean, like, right. I just posted a video about a very famous influencer, Ballerina Farms, having to close down her raw milk production because, surprise, surprise, it was found to be contaminated with coliform, which causes E. coli. So, the fact that we have people in power recommending raw milk, which is a known vessel for foodborne illness, and hugely so, is wild to me. That it just feels like we're kind of we're going backwards in a lot of ways, where the more research we have, the more people want to just ignore it and go back to these kind of romanticizing the good old days. Well, in the good old days, people got sick and they died very early on because of disease, because we didn't have technology to help, with food safety and just crops being able to be grown in a way that people can afford to eat more nutritious foods. So that's bothersome. And I think the other one that's kind of coming right, like that's big right now, is this overwhelming protein craze, where food manufacturers are slapping protein in everything: protein water, protein pop, protein, you know pop tarts, protein popcorn. And you know what? If you like that particular snack food, great. I love that for you. But I worry that in a lot of cases, these are not nutritious foods. They might have 1 or 2 extra grams of protein compared to the other, but a cookie with 2 extra grams of protein is still a cookie with, 14, 16, 18, 20 grams of sugar in it. And so it creates these health halos where people see the word protein on the front and they think, oh, okay, I can replace my chicken breast at lunch with this protein Pop Tart instead. And that's great marketing, but that is not going to move the needle on our health.
Right. And on the opposite end, had there ever been any health trends that you were actually behind and supported?
Um, to some degree, because I think that unfortunately a lot of health trends get always taken to an extreme. So there's the fiber maxing trend that we started to kind of hear about. And I think on the good side, it gives, yeah, fiber is really important. I talk about this in the hunger crushing combo method. It's 95% of North Americans do not meet the minimum amount of fiber recommended for good health. It's great for satiety because it increases our satiety hormones. It slows down blood sugars. It helps to reduce cholesterol. It helps with our gut health. And the health of our gut microbiome impacts the health of every other system in the body. But when we say fiber maxing, again, this is like, how do we get to an extreme of any kind of potentially health promoting behavior? And then what ends up happening is then we have food manufacturers throwing 20 grams of isolated, inulin fiber in a snack bar, which is going to cause so much bloating and so much, discomfort. And again, it's just, the marketability of these food trends from the food manufacturer side of things, where really we should just be eating more whole plants. Like, that should be the trend. Let's just eat more plants. But that's not the message. The message is like, let's get as much fiber as we possibly can. And that typically means we're going to just be loading up on a more ultra processed foods, which ultimately are not going to move the needle.
Right, right. So I know we have a few minutes left, and I kind of want to wrap up talking more about your book because, of course, main chapter is a book-centered podcast. And we talked earlier how your book has been doing so well. It was right behind Oprah Winfrey on the
Yeah,
Amazon charts, which is so cool.
crazy.
It has, I believe, 4.7 stars on Goodreads, which is very high for Goodreads. People are
Yes,
haters on
I
Goodreads.
know.
So,
I
as
know.
someone who reads a lot of Goodreads books, and so I know the book literally came out less than a month ago, but has a response made you entertain the idea of writing a second book, maybe? And what do you think that book could be perhaps about?
Yeah, I mean, when I kind of came up with the idea and the outline for this book, The Hunger Crushing Combo Method, it was really as the kind of like base Bible, thinking that this could be a much bigger kind of series of books. Because in the book, we have chapters on how to utilize and how to kind of manipulate the Hunger Crushing Combo Method for when you have weight loss or weight management goals, blood sugar, insulin resistance, PCOS, diabetes, perimenopause and menopause, sports, whether it's strength training, endurance sports, or fitness goals, and then also how to help, feed a healthy family and children. And so all of these and many, many more, there's so many ways that we could create books specifically for, Hunger Crushing Combo for PCOS and Hunger Crushing Combo for kids, children's books, more specific cookbooks. There are 30 recipes in the book, and these are very simple, adaptable recipes. I want people to essentially use them as templates that they can add their favorite protein sources, healthy fats, and fiber. And I give suggestions on all of those ways to switch things up. But this could absolutely, become a whole cookbook on its own, a series of cookbooks, a children's book. I mean, like really the possibilities are endless because this is the beautiful thing about the Hunger Crushing Combo Method is it is not something that you only can use for one goal or one stage of life. It is meant to be your lifelong framework. The only thing you really need to think about to anchor those meals and snacks as you move through the life cycle with various goals. And it can be adapted based on what your needs and kind of requirements are. So lots of opportunities for more books. Yeah.
Right. More cookbooks would be so fun, or even a children's book. I
Hmm.
always love to bring up a question about book talk, and this is kind of intersection of book talk and nutrition talk and seeing how they overlap. But I was wondering if you have any book recommendations that you've gotten from TikTok or social media, whether they be nutrition or otherwise.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. I love Christy Harrison's books. She's great, like very anti-diet books. She's fantastic, registered dietitian. So her books are a really great place to start for people who are looking for more kind of like to get into the anti-diet space. But I will say, and again, because I've been looking at the charts a lot of the big books that are the top sellers are kind of quacky, and that's like they're again sensationalized, very like very specific, but unfortunately in a lot of cases not always super evidence based, and that's really one of the reasons why I felt the Hunger Crush and Combo method needed to be written, because it provided that real life structure grounded in research. There's 400 citations I put in this book, so lots of evidence-based content, but also real world actionable strategies, tips that you can integrate today.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, we are going back to romance. I'm interviewing USA Today bestselling author Kat Mazzara, who has over 100 titles published, a lot of them being hockey romance, which is so hot right now. We're going to be talking about her latest book, The Penalty Kiss, which I'm so excited about, and also what it's like having so many works published. So tune into that. I feel like it's just such an exciting time for main chapter. I've gotten so many emails the last few weeks, stuff I'm really excited to share with you soon. One thing I can share with you now, I learned from my friends at Yankee Candle. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they have teamed up with Reese's Book Club, and they are releasing 4 candles this year that are all based off of books, and they just released their first one. It's inspired by The First Time I Saw Him by Laura Dave. I haven't smelled it yet, but apparently it's supposed to smell like new beginnings, so hopefully really refreshing and fun. I am sure it smells great, and I'm so excited to see what other creations they come up with. I definitely will be following that, and you should as well. And I hope you all have such a great week, my book butterflies, and until next time.